What happens when a young guy humiliates an elderly veteran in a small-town diner? The old man's faded tattoo catches a seal's eye, and what unfolds next leaves the whole room speechless. I've walked Juniper Hollow Road in Brighthaven, Nebraska, more times than I can count. Each step a quiet rhythm against the cracked asphalt, worn smooth by years of boots and tires. The early morning sun hangs low, painting long shadows that stretch like memories across the grain elevators humming in the distance. Their faint diesel scent mixes with the crisp air, carrying the promise of another ordinary day. At 60 feet tall, those elevators are the closest thing Brighthaven has to a skyline, and they've stood longer than most folks here have been alive. Me included, though I'm pushing 78 now, and my knees remind me of it every morning. The rusty Anchor Diner sits at the corner of Juniper and 4th Street, its neon sign flickering like it's on its last breath. The red booths inside are faded, the linoleum floor scuffed from decades of footsteps, but there's a warmth to the place, a stubborn kind of comfort, like an old friend who's seen you through hard times. I push open the glass door, the bell above jingling softly, and step inside, my boots clicking against the floor. In my left hand, I carry a small paper bag, the kind you'd get at a corner store, with a crisp $20 bill tucked inside. It's for the diner's Pay It Forward Fund, a tradition some kind soul started years ago to cover meals for folks down on their luck. I've been dropping off a 20 every Saturday for longer than most of these folks have worked here. It's not much, but it's something. A way to keep giving, even if the world's forgotten what I gave long ago. The diner's alive with the usual morning crowd. Farmers in overalls swapping stories about crop yields, a couple of truckers hunched over coffee that's more sludge than beverage, and a gaggle of high school kids in the corner booth, laughing too loud over their phones. I catch the eye of Marla Jenkins, the waitress who's been here since the Clinton administration. She's got a kind face, lined with years of hard work, and she gives me a quick smile before hurrying off with a tray of pancakes stacked high enough to feed a platoon. I don't expect fanfare, never have, but a nod's enough to keep me coming back. I make my way to the counter, where Devin Baxter, the new cashier, barely looks up from his phone. He's 19, maybe 20, with a mop of curly brown hair and an expression that says he'd rather be anywhere else. I set the paper bag down gently, my voice low but clear. "Morning, Devin. This is for the fund. For anyone who needs it today." Devin glances at the bag, then back at his screen, his fingers still scrolling. "Yeah, sure, old man. I'll get to it." His tone's flat, like he's reading a script he doesn't believe in, and he doesn't bother to look me in the eye. I feel a familiar twinge in my chest. Not anger, not yet, but the dull ache of being dismissed. I've seen that look before, in bars and bus stations, from folks who think an old man with a limp and a faded flannel is just taking up space. I roll my sleeve a bit higher, the trident tattoo on my arm catching the light. It's blurred now, the ink softened by time. But it's still there, a reminder of who I was, even if no one else remembers. I turn to leave, my boots scuffing softly, when a voice cuts through the diner's hum like a bayonet. "Hey, Grandpa, you forgot your change!" It's Travis Colton, a contractor in his 30s who's built like a linebacker and talks like he owns the place. He's sprawled in a booth by the window, his work boots propped on the seat across from him, waving a dollar bill like it's a prop in his personal comedy show. His buddies, 3 guys in Carhartt jackets with the same smug grin, chuckle like trained seals. "Or you just dropping off your life savings for the poor folks?" The diner goes quiet, the kind of silence that feels like the world holding its breath. Every eye's on me now, from the farmers to the truckers to the kids with their phones. Marla pauses mid-step, her tray wobbling, her eyes flicking to me with a mix of worry and apology. I stop, my hand resting on the doorframe, and turn slowly. My heart's steady, but there's a fire kindling in my gut, the kind I haven't felt since a dusty road in Fallujah. "Just helping out, Travis," I say, keeping my voice even. "No need to make a scene." Travis leans back, his smirk widening like he's just found his morning entertainment. "Helping out? Come on, Marwood. You're out here acting like Mother Teresa, tossing your pennies around like it's gonna save the world. Why don't you sit down and let the real men handle things? His buddies roar, one of them slapping the table so hard the silverware rattles. The high school kids snicker, their phones now pointed at me, capturing every word for their social media feeds. I feel the weight of their stares, the judgment in their eyes. It's not the first time I've been sized up and found wanting. Back in '68, in a jungle so thick you couldn't see the sky, I learned to keep my head down and my heart steady. But this stings different. I'm not some stranger passing through. Brighthaven's my home, and I've buried friends for the right to call it that. I open my mouth to say something, but Devin beats me to it, his voice dripping with that lazy sarcasm kids his age think passes for wit. Yeah, man, maybe take your charity somewhere else. We don't need handouts from, what, a retired janitor? Janitor. The word lands like a punch to the ribs. I've never cleaned a floor for a living, but I've scrubbed blood off my hands more times than I care to count. I feel my jaw tighten, but I keep my face still, the way I learned to when staring down an enemy who didn't know I was the last thing he'd see. Marla shoots Devin a look that could curdle milk, but the kid just shrugs, his eyes back on his phone like he didn't just spit on my life's work. I take a slow breath, my fingers brushing the tattoo on my arm. It's a habit, touching that ink when the world feels heavy. I could walk away, Lord knows I've done it before, when the insults weren't worth the fight. But today, something holds me back. Maybe it's the way Travis's laughter echoes, or the way Devin's words linger like smoke. I'm no janitor, I say, my voice low but carrying enough weight to hush the room for a moment. And I'm not here to cause trouble. Just thought someone might need a meal today. Travis stands, his 6-foot frame filling the space between us, his grin turning mean. A meal? You're embarrassing yourself, Marwood. Go home before you trip over your own ego. He steps closer, his boots thudding on the linoleum, and reaches out as if to shove the paper bag back into my hands. His fingers graze my arm instead, brushing the tattoo. He pauses, his eyes narrowing at the faded ink. What's that, your old fishing club logo? His buddies howl, but there's a flicker in Travis's eyes. Doubt, maybe? Or the first hint he's bitten off more than he can chew. I meet his gaze, unblinking. Not quite, I say, my voice steady but sharp, like the edge of a knife you don't see coming, but you wouldn't understand. I've faced men like Travis before, loud, brash, thinking they own the room because they've got youth and muscle. They don't know what it's like to carry the weight of lives lost, of choices made in the dark. I'm about to turn away, to let it go, when the door jingles again, sharp and clear. A young man steps inside, mid-20s, lean and hard as rebar, with close-cropped black hair and a navy blue jacket that's seen better days. His sleeve bears a patch, a trident, just like mine, though his is crisp and new. Jackson Reed, I learn later, a Navy SEAL on leave, come to Brighthaven to visit family. He stops just inside the door, his eyes scanning the room like he's walking into a combat zone. They land on me, then flick to my tattoo, and he freezes, his breath catching like he's seen a ghost. I don't know him, but I know that look. It's the look of a man who's seen the same hell I have, who knows what that trident means. He steps forward, his boots heavy, his voice cutting through the tension like a rifle shot. You might want to step back, sir. Travis turns, sizing Jackson up with a sneer. Who the hell are you, his babysitter? His buddies laugh, but it's nervous now, the kind of laugh that knows the ground's shifting. Jackson doesn't flinch. His eyes stay on me, and there's something in them. Respect, recognition, that makes my chest ache in a way I haven't felt in years. I'm just someone who knows what that tattoo means, he says, nodding toward my arm, and I'd bet my life it's not from a fishing club. I meet his gaze, and for the first time today, I feel a spark of something like pride. Not the loud kind, but the quiet kind that comes from knowing someone sees you, really sees you. I give him a small nod, my lips twitching toward a smile. Travis opens his mouth to fire back, but Jackson's stare stops him cold. The diner's a live wire now, every eye on us, waiting for the spark to ignite. Travis recovers, his voice loud but shaky. "What, you two in some secret handshake club? Get out of here with that nonsense." He points at me, his finger inches from my chest. I said, "Take your bag and go, old man." Jackson steps closer, his posture calm but radiating a quiet threat. "I'd suggest you rethink that tone. You're talking to someone who's earned more respect than you'll ever understand." The room's silent now, save for the faint buzz of the neon sign outside. Marla's knuckles are white on the counter. The high school kids are holding their breath, and even Devon's stopped scrolling. I stand still, my hand on the paper bag, anchoring myself to why I came here. I didn't come to fight, but damn if I'm not ready to stand my ground. The air inside the rusty Anchor diner felt like it could catch fire with a single spark. The neon sign outside buzzed faintly, its red glow bleeding through the windows, painting jagged shadows across the scuffed linoleum floor. I stood by the counter, my hand resting on the paper bag I'd brought for the Pay It Forward fund, its crisp $20 bill a small gesture in a world that seemed hell-bent on misunderstanding me. My heart was steady, but there was a heat in my chest, a slow burn kindled by Travis Colton's relentless taunts. The contractor stood too close, his 6-foot frame looming, his smirk sharp as a blade. Jackson Reed, the young Navy SEAL who'd walked in minutes ago, stood at my side, his eyes locked on Travis, his body taut like a coiled spring. The diner's usual hum, clinking plates, murmured conversations, was gone, replaced by a silence so thick it pressed against my eardrums. I've faced worse than Travis Colton in my 78 years. Men with guns, not just loud mouths, in places where the air smelled of cordite and fear. But there's something about being mocked in your own town. In a diner you've walked into every Saturday for years. That cuts deeper than shrapnel. Travis's voice boomed again, slicing through the quiet. "You think you're tough, old man? You and your little bodyguard here don't scare me." He jabbed a finger at Jackson, then turned back to me, his eyes glinting with the kind of bravado that comes from never having been tested. "This ain't your stage, Marwood. Take your bag and get out." I adjusted my baseball cap, the faded American flag on it catching the light. My fingers brushed the trident tattoo on my arm, its lines blurred by decades but still sharp in my memory. I could have walked away. Lord knows I've done it before, when the fight wasn't worth the scars. But today, the weight of every stare in the diner, the farmers, the truckers, the high school kids with their phones, held me in place. "See, I'm not looking for trouble, Travis," I said, my voice low, the kind of calm you learn when you've stared down death and walked away, just trying to do right by someone who might need it. Jackson stepped closer, his boots heavy on the floor, his navy blue jacket creaking faintly. "You don't know who you're talking to," he said to Travis, his voice steady, but edged with a warning I recognized from my own days in uniform. "I'd walk away if I were you." His eyes flicked to my tattoo, and I saw something in them. Respect, maybe. Or the kind of understanding that only comes from carrying the same weight I've carried. It made my chest ache, not with pain, but with a pride I hadn't felt in years. Travis laughed, a loud, grating sound that echoed off the diner's walls. "Oh, come on, kid. You're acting like this guy's some kind of war hero." He turned to his buddies in the booth, 3 guys in work jackets who'd been egging him on all morning. Am I right? Marwood's probably been spinning that a veteran yarn for free beers his whole life. His buddies chuckled, but the laughter was thinner now, less certain, as if they sensed the ground shifting beneath them. The accusation hit like a sucker punch. I've never asked for a free beer in my life, never needed to. I've earned my keep, and then some, in jungles and deserts where men like Travis wouldn't last a day. My jaw tightened, but I kept my face still, the way I did when I was 22, leading a squad through a rice paddy with bullets snapping overhead. Marla, the waitress, stood frozen behind the counter, her hands twisting a dish rag into knots. Her eyes met mine, full of apology, but she didn't speak. The high school kids in the corner booth had stopped laughing, their phones still raised but their faces uncertain. Devin, the cashier, finally looked up from his phone, his bored smirk replaced by a flicker of unease. "Travis, that's enough," Marla said, her voice trembling but firm. She stepped forward, her tray of pancakes long forgotten. "Leave Mr. Marwood alone. He's just trying to do something kind." Her words were brave, but they only seemed to fuel Travis's fire. "Kind," he scoffed, waving her off like she was a pesky fly. "Don't tell me you're buying this act, Marla. This guy's a nobody, playing saint to make himself feel big." He turned back to me, his grin turning ugly. "What's your deal, Marwood? Got a sob story ready? Let's hear it. You saved the president or something?" I felt the heat in my chest flare, but I kept it caged. I've learned over the years that anger's a young man's game, wastes energy you need for the long haul. "No stories," I said, my voice steady but sharp, like the click of a rifle bolt. "Just a man trying to help. You'd do well to try it sometime." There was a bite in my words, a touch of the old fire, and I saw Travis's eyes narrow, like he wasn't used to being challenged. Before he could fire back, the diner door jingled again, sharp and sudden, cutting through the tension like a knife. Two figures stepped inside, their boots heavy on the linoleum. Harlan Vance, a burly man in his 60s with a gray beard and a limp that spoke of old wounds, wore a leather vest patched with the insignia of a veterans motorcycle club. Beside him was Dolores Quinn, wiry and tough as nails, her buzz cut gleaming under the diner's fluorescent lights. I've known them both for years, shared coffee and quiet stories at VFW meetings, though we don't talk much about the past. They'd come for their Saturday ritual, same as me, but the scene before them stopped them cold. Harlan's eyes narrowed, taking in Travis's aggressive stance and Jackson's protective posture. "What's going on here, Elliot?" he asked, his voice gruff but steady, like he was sizing up a threat. Dolores didn't wait for an answer. She stepped forward, her sharp eyes locked on Travis. "This guy giving you trouble?" she asked, her tone carrying the weight of someone who's face down worse than a loudmouth contractor. Travis scoffed, turning to face them, his confidence surging back. "Oh great, the Old Timers Club is here. What is this, a nursing home field trip?" His buddies laughed, but it was forced now, their eyes darting nervously to Harlan and Dolores. The rest of the diner was silent, every patron sensing the storm brewing. Dolores crossed her arms, her gaze cutting through Travis like a laser. "You got a problem with veterans, son?" she said, her voice low and dangerous. "Because you're picking a fight with the wrong folks." There was no bluster in her words, just the quiet certainty of someone who'd seen combat and come out the other side. I raised a hand, trying to keep the peace. "It's all right, Dolores," I said, my voice calm but firm. "I don't need a scene, just came to drop this off." I nodded at the paper bag, still sitting on the counter, its edges creased from Travis's earlier grip. Didn't expect it to turn into a damn circus. But Travis wasn't done. He stepped closer, his voice rising, filling the diner with his bravado. "A circus? You're the one making a show, Marwood, acting all high and mighty. You're nothing but a has-been, and you know it." He grabbed the paper bag, crumpling it in his fist, and tossed it toward the trash can near the counter. It missed, hitting the floor with a soft thud, the $20 bill spilling out like a quiet accusation. The diner gasped, a collective intake of breath that felt like the world pausing. Marla covered her mouth, her eyes wide with shock. Devin stared at the bag, his phone forgotten, his face flushed with something like shame. The high school kids whispered, one of them muttering, "That's messed up, man." Jackson's hands clenched into fists, but he didn't move, his eyes flicking to me, waiting for my lead. I stared at the bag on the floor, my heart pounding now. Not with fear, but with a quiet rage I hadn't felt in years. I've seen men die for less than a $20 bill, fought for ideals bigger than this diner, this town, this moment. But that bag, it wasn't about the money. It was about the principle, about doing right in a world that's forgotten how. I knelt slowly, my knees creaking, and picked it up, smoothing it out with hands that have held rifles and bandages and the hands of dying friends. I tucked the bill back inside and set it on the counter. "That's for someone who needs it," I said, my voice low but carrying a weight that silenced the room. Travis's face reddened, his bravado cracking like cheap glass. He opened his mouth, but Jackson cut him off, his voice sharp as a blade. "You're done here. Step back or I'll make you." Harlan and Dolores moved closer, their presence like a wall at my back. The diner was a battlefield now, every eye on us, every breath held. Marla tried again, her voice shaking. "Travis, please, just stop. You've made your point." But Travis, too deep in his own pride, couldn't let it go. "My point? I'm just calling it like it is. This guy's a nobody, and you're all acting like he's some kind of legend." He pointed at me, his finger inches from my chest. "Prove it, Marwood. Show us you're more than just talk." I met his gaze, and for the first time, I let him see the fire in me. The part of me that led men through hell, that carried wounds no one sees. "I don't need to prove anything to you," I said, my voice soft but heavy, like the calm before a storm. "But you might want to think twice about who you're pushing, son." The words hung in the air, and I saw something flicker in Travis's eyes. Fear, maybe, or the dawning realization that he'd misjudged me. Jackson stepped forward, his hand on my shoulder, a silent vow. Harlan and Dolores stood ready, their eyes locked on Travis. The diner was a powder keg, and I was the match. The Rusty Anchor Diner felt like a battlefield, the air so thick with tension it seemed to hum against my skin. The neon sign outside flickered, casting a red glow that danced across the linoleum floor, worn smooth by decades of boots and burdens. I stood by the counter, my hand resting on the crumpled paper bag I'd brought for the Pay It Forward fund. Its $20 bill, a quiet testament to a principle I'd fought for long before Travis Colton decided to make me his morning sport. At 78, I've learned to keep my heart steady, but there was a fire in my chest now, a slow-burning rage fed by the contractor's relentless mockery. Travis stood too close, his finger jabbing the air inches from my chest, his voice loud and raw. "You think you're tough, old man? You're nothing, Marwood, just a washed-up nobody with a fake story." I met his gaze, my eyes steady, the way they were in 68, when I led men through jungles where death waited behind every tree. "I told you, Travis," I said, my voice low, carrying the weight of years I'd never share with him. "I'm not here to fight, but you're making it real hard to walk away." My fingers brushed the trident tattoo on my arm, its faded lines a map of sacrifices he'd never understand. I could feel every eye in the diner, the farmers, the truckers, the high school kids with their phones, watching, waiting, judging. Jackson Reed, the young Navy SEAL who'd walked in earlier, stood at my side, his lean frame radiating a quiet strength. His navy blue jacket bore a trident patch, crisp and new, a mirror to my own. His eyes flicked to Travis, then back to me, a silent promise in them. "Last chance," he said to Travis, his voice calm but sharp as a blade. "Walk away. Now." Harlan Vance and Dolores Quinn, my old friends from the Veterans Motorcycle Club, flanked me like sentinels. Harlan's gray beard framed a face carved by hard years, his limp a reminder of wounds we don't talk about. Dolores, wiry and fierce, her buzz cut gleaming under the fluorescent lights, stared Travis down with eyes that could stop a tank. The diner was a powder keg, every breath held, every heart pounding. Marla, the waitress, clutched the counter, her knuckles white, her kind face etched with worry. The high school kids in the corner booth had their phones up, filming, but their laughter was gone, replaced by wide-eyed awe. Devin, the cashier, stood frozen, his phone forgotten, his earlier smirk replaced by a flush of shame. Travis's buddies, three guys in work jackets who'd been so quick to laugh, sat silent in their booth, their eyes darting nervously. Travis laughed, but it was a hollow sound, cracking under the weight of the room's scrutiny. "Oh, come on," he said, his voice loud but unsteady. "You and your little fan club don't scare me. This guy's a nobody, acting like he's some kind of legend." He pointed at me again, his finger trembling now, his bravado fraying like cheap rope. "Prove it, Marwood. Show us you're more than just talk." I felt the fire in my chest flare, but I kept it caged, the way I did when I was 22, carrying a wounded man through a hail of bullets. "I don't need to prove anything to you," I said, my voice soft but heavy, like the calm before a storm. "But you might want to think twice about who you're pushing, son." The word son wasn't kind. It was a challenge, a reminder that I'd seen more of the world's cruelty than he'd ever know. Before Travis could respond, the diner door swung open with a sharp jingle, cutting through the tension like a rifle shot. A man stepped inside, mid-50s, broad-shouldered, dressed in a navy blazer that fit like it was tailored for command. A silver trident pin gleamed on his lapel, identical to the one on my arm. Nathan Hargrove, a name I hadn't spoken in years, but one I'd never forget. We'd served together in places where the sun burned your skin and the nights froze your soul. He'd been passing through Brighthaven, headed to a veterans conference in Omaha, and stopped for a coffee. The scene before him stopped him dead. Nathan's eyes swept the room, taking in Travis's aggressive stance, Jackson's protective posture, and the quiet resolve in my face. His gaze lingered on my tattoo, and a slow smile spread across his face, the kind that says he's seen you at your worst and still calls you brother. "Well, I'll be damned," he said, his voice deep and warm, carrying the authority of a man who'd led men into hell and brought them back. "Elliot Marwood, you still stirring up trouble wherever you go?" The diner froze, every head turning toward Nathan, then back to me. Travis's smirk faltered, his confidence crumbling like dry earth. I met Nathan's gaze, and for the first time that morning, I let myself smile, a small, genuine curve of my lips. "Just trying to buy someone a meal, Nate," I said, my voice softer now, the fire in my chest easing. "Didn't expect to start a war." Nathan chuckled, but his eyes turned to Travis, and there was steel in them. "And you are?" he asked, his tone polite but cold, like a commander sizing up a recruit who stepped out of line. Travis opened his mouth, but no words came. He looked smaller now, his 6-foot frame shrinking under Nathan's gaze. I'm just," he stammered, gesturing vaguely at me. This guy was making a scene, acting like he's some big deal. Nathan raised an eyebrow, his eyes flicking to the paper bag on the counter. "A scene? Looks to me like he was doing something decent. Something you wouldn't understand." He stepped closer, his voice dropping to a whisper that carried to every corner of the diner. "You want to know who this man is? Or should I let him tell you?" Travis's eyes darted to his buddies, but they offered no help, their faces pale. The room was silent, every patron hanging on Nathan's words. Jackson stepped back, his posture relaxing, but his eyes stayed on Travis, ready to move if needed. Harlan and Dolores exchanged a glance, their expressions unreadable, but satisfied. I raised a hand, my voice steady. "No need for that, Nate," I said. "I don't need to prove anything to this young man." I turned to Travis, locking eyes with him, letting him see the man I was. The man who'd carried wounds, buried friends, and stood tall when the world tried to break me. But I will say this. I've fought for this country. I've lost more than you'll ever know. I've carried scars you can't see. And I don't do it for applause. I do it because it's right. You do well to remember that not every old man is what you think." The words landed like a thunderclap, heavy and final. The high school kids lowered their phones, their eyes wide with something like awe. Marla wiped a tear from her cheek, her hands trembling. Devin stared at the counter, his face flushed, his earlier arrogance gone. The farmers and truckers nodded, their faces grim but respectful, as if they'd known men like me their whole lives. Nathan stepped forward, his hand on my shoulder, warm and solid. "This man, he said, addressing the room, his voice ringing with pride, is a Navy SEAL, one of the best I ever served with. He saved lives, mine included, more times than I can count. That tattoo, it's not a decoration, it's a mark of honor, earned in blood and sacrifice. The diner erupted in murmurs, the weight of Nathan's words sinking in. Travis took a step back, his face pale, his hands raised as if to shield himself from the truth. "I didn't know," he muttered, his voice barely audible. "I didn't mean—" "You didn't think," Jackson cut in, his voice sharp but controlled. "You saw an old man and thought you could push him around. You were wrong." Dolores stepped forward, her eyes locked on Travis. "You owe him an apology," she said, her voice like a whip, "and you owe that bag a place back on the counter." Travis hesitated, his pride warring with the weight of the room's judgment. Finally, he bent down, his hands shaking, and picked up the crumpled bag. He smoothed it out as best he could and set it back on the counter. His head bowed. "I'm sorry, Mr. Marwood," he said, his voice low, almost broken. "I didn't know." I nodded, my expression softening but not yielding. "Apology accepted," I said. "But next time, think before you speak. Respect doesn't come with an age limit." I let the words hang, a lesson not just for him but for everyone watching. The diner was silent for a long moment, the weight of the moment settling over us. Then Marla started clapping, her hands trembling but determined. The high school kids joined in, then the truckers, the farmers, until the entire diner was filled with the sound of applause, a chorus of respect that warmed my old bones. Travis's buddies slunk down in their booth, their faces red with shame. Devin quietly slipped the $20 bill into the Pay It Forward fund, his head bowed, his earlier arrogance gone. I tipped my cap to the room, a small gesture of thanks, then turned to leave. Jackson, Nathan, Harlan, and Dolores fell in step behind me, their presence a quiet strength at my back. As we reached the door, one of the high school kids called out, "Thank you, sir." The words echoed, joined by others, a wave of gratitude that followed us into the morning light. Outside, the sun was warm on Juniper Hollow Road, the grain elevators humming in the distance. Nathan clapped me on the back, his grin wide. "You always did have a way of making an entrance, Marwood," he said, his voice full of warmth. I chuckled, the tension easing from my shoulders. "Just wanted a coffee, Nate. Guess I got more than I bargained for." Jackson grinned, his eyes bright with admiration. "You're a legend, sir," he said. "It's my honor to stand with you." I looked at him, then at Harlan and Dolores, and nodded, my throat tight. "The honor's mine, son. All of you." We walked away, the diner's neon sign flickering behind us. Travis stood alone at the counter, his head bowed, the weight of his actions settling like a stone in his chest.